All right, what's going on? So this is a tier list video, as I'm sure you were able to kind of tell from the title of the video. And yeah, this is unfortunately, not really unfortunately, but Damien Darkblood just came out, and he is not going to be on this tier list in any way, shape, or form. But before we get started, I do want to give you guys a little bit of an introducer into who I am and why you should listen to me or value this information. I've been playing Invincible Guardians of the Galaxy for almost 2 years. I am not a free-to-play player. I'm not like a whale full out, but I do spend a decent amount. This is, kind of a full overview of my account. Just kind of see everything that I've got going on. Let's go look at my artifacts. Got a lot of artifacts. I think I got every artifact now. Yeah, I do. My totems, I don't have every totem. A lot of the totems I kind of just refuse to get. Some of the totems like chicken pot pie, president's hat, I didn't want. I still don't want. Evaluation request device, it's Allen's. I don't even have an Allen. But yeah, so I've invested a lot of time, energy, effort, money. I have several spreadsheets for this game as well. I might pop some of those up on the screen. But yeah, so I've made a lot of progress in all of the case files. And my tier list is going to be kind of an interesting one. At least to me, it's interesting. Because the main focus of the tier list is going to be like the biggest function of how I indicate how good a character is how effective they are across the board. And that means case files, PvP, boss raid, warfare, operations, and nightmares, right? So all the characters in my top tier, in my SS broken from start, all of those characters, due to one quality or another, are significantly powerful in multiple categories, right? So like my best character in the game, in my opinion, is Thrag. Thrag is going to be great in multiple ops. He's going to be great in PvP. He's going to be great in Cecil's Nightmares. He's going to be great in Multiverse Arena. He's going to be great in boss raids. He's going to be great in Alliance Warfare. And if he had a case file, I'm sure he would do great in his case file. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, towards the bottom, we have characters like Titan, who is not good in any operation, is not good in Multiverse Arena, is not good in campaign. He is not good in Cecil's Nightmare. He barely, I don't even think he can clear his own case file. Titan is not a good unit. He is just not good. And one of the other low tiers that we have is what I just kind of cheekily called like a negative smiley face. And what that category is essentially characters that could be good, but lack certain qualities to make them good. Like, Lucan isn't the worst character in the game, but he just lacks certain qualities that would actually make him a decent character. So, that's like the overall kind of scope to give you some flavor on, to give you some taste for. And now I'm just going to quickly go through and I'm going to tell you about each category as a total, now that you kind of understand the rubric, so I can give you a little bit more backstory. And then I'm actually just going to go through my character list and explain why each character in order from best to worst is there. So once again, SS, broken from start, this means that you can put these characters anywhere in the game and it's going to benefit you. S category means these characters are extremely synergistic. So wherever they are valuable, if they are paired with characters that have synergy with them, and most of these characters have synergy with almost everybody to a certain extent, right? Like Krieg is going to be good with almost anybody, especially if you have one invader on the team. He's going to boost all your Viltrumites. He's going to bring you an extra unit. Krieg is just amazing. A tier is must builds. These characters are units that are going to have an extreme impact on your ability to clear specific types of content. They're kind of like extreme synergists, but instead of relying on their specific synergistic abilities, it's more about how effective they are at directly impacting certain operations. So like Russ is going to be really, really good for you in downtown destruction, and that enough is a valid enough reason for you to build him. Versus Krieg, you're going to move Krieg around a lot. He's going to be useful in a lot of different situations. Russ isn't necessarily that useful in that many situations, but he's still good. Next, we have B, which requires investment. I think every character in this category has value to bring to your game if you're willing to drop about 5,000 molecular enhancement into them. Every one of these characters requires a very high level of investment to become valuable to your account. It does not mean they are inherently bad. It just means that they are expensive. C tier. This means that these units, they're not bad, but there is definitively another unit in the game that is incredibly similar to them that is going to do a better job. We can just straight up go down the list and point out every one of these characters that somebody else is a better from Uni being replaced by Space Racer. Next, we have D-Class. These units are relatively or just straight up hard to build, making them a little bit less effective. Multi-Paw is not a standard character. KP is not a standard character. Seance Dog is not a standard character. I found Powerplex to be extremely hard to build. That means that these characters aren't necessarily bad, but it's something that you should consider when you are thinking about building them, whether or not they are actually that good. Let's see. Next, we have extremely niche. These characters are good, but only going to be good in specific circumstances. So you look at a unit like Flaxen Leader, who I think is really good, but he's only going to be good in essentially one or two ops, Train and Gain or Downtown Destruction. He's kind of useless anywhere else. Same thing with an Agent Spider, who is a really good unit, don't get me wrong, but he is extremely niche. The Maulers, same thing. Monster Girl, same thing. Red Rush, same thing. Bulletproof, same thing, right? And then finally, we already kind of touched on, fuck no, all these characters are bad. It does not matter where you put them. Angstrom, I'm actually kind of considering moving Angstrom out of this tier. I recently just built an Angstrom. He's still kind of low, but I'm kind of surprised by how good he is and how strong he is. And then once again, Sad Faces, these characters just they're just missing something. Something about the character is wrong or significantly holding them back. And then Leftover Village, these are all units that aren't even really worth talking about. Kursk does have some value. I've seen some different teams and builds that use Kursk and his abilities to do some interesting things. I just think that the same things you can do with Kursk, you can also do with a Fish Boy. So I just don't value Kursk that highly. All right. So now that we've kind of gone through everything, this is a really long intro. Sorry about that. Let's start with the first unit, and the first unit is going to be Thrag. Now, Thrag is a From Worlds Beyond unit. He's a flying unit. He's a Viltrumite, and he's just really goddamn strong, just thoroughly across the board. I already have my Thrag 15, all 4 skills 15. The thing about Thrag that makes Thrag so goddamn strong isn't just the fact that his stats on its own are crazy. Just baseline stats are significantly higher than almost every single counterpart in the game. His abilities are also extremely cracked. His first ability is decent right out the gate. 23-second cooldown, but its ability to pull all the enemies and allies towards him can completely reset the battlefield, and is another synergistic ability that can kind of adjust the flow of the fight depending on who your units are. So, you look at characters like Shapesmith, Cecil, even Conquest to a certain extent, definitively Anissa, Battle Beast, Yark, all these characters that have abilities that Space Racer 2 that move them around the battlefield due to where their positioning is, and even characters like Robot, whose first ability is Healing Sphere. Thrag's ability to pull units in is going to change how those abilities function. And then when he does the punch, he punches away enemies but not allies. So that's really, really useful. And once you get it up to just level 5, he begins to reduce enemies' attacks by 30% for 10 seconds, which is huge. I mean, that's literally massive. 30% of, let's not look at Thrag, let's look at like an Omni-Man. Omni-Man has 130k attack. 30% of that is, that's not nothing. That's like 45k attack for 10 seconds. So he goes from being that strong to being where maybe Thula level, even weaker than Thula. right? Weaker than Yark. Like, damn, that is kind of thick. Sorry, I'm trying to find somebody that has the power level that, like Cecil. He goes from being Omni-Man to being Cecil after receiving Thrag's skill at first skill at level 5. That's crazy. And if you take it all the way to level 10, he suddenly jumps up to dealing 400% damage, which doesn't seem like that big of a boost from dealing 370, but 400% of his attack is a huge number, and then he's reducing their attack by 40%. At 15, or I should do this better, when you upgrade from 10 to 11, he also gains the ability to silence. And what silence means is he cancels out the ability for anybody on the other team to use any of their skills. I don't think that means passive. I think it just means their actual active skills. So the things that require cooldowns. That's huge. That's huge. And it's for 10 seconds. So that's a long time in PvP. And that's even a long time in Ops. That's a long time in Nightmares. That's a long time in Case Files. Like, there's not really a format where 10 seconds, maybe Boss Raid, it's less of an impact. I think Boss Raid is 2 minutes. But even still, it's still insanely powerful in that aspect. And then at max level, it's reducing their attack by 50%. So you're literally cutting their attack in half. So going back to Omni-Man, you're taking him to 65k, which is making him weaker than, I think that's even weaker than a Komodo. Yeah, that's weaker than a Komodo. Like, he's weaker than Flaxen Leader, right? Like, he's weaker than my 840 Seance Dog. He's weaker than Green Ghost. I'm essentially turning Omni-Man into Green Ghost every 22 seconds. That's insane. 23 seconds. Man, this video is going to be a lot longer than I intended. Holy, I am way too long-winded for this. Thrag's second ability boosts his max HP for each Viltrite present. And also he grants confusion to the enemy teams. It's 4 random enemies for 3 seconds. So that essentially is, 80% of the enemy team for 3 seconds are completely out of the fight. And not only are they out of the fight, they're fighting each other. That's massive. Obviously, that can be countered with things like Neural Disruptor, Conquest's ability, Adam Eve's ability. But, that's not worth dismissing that ability as being absolutely OP. Thrag's third ability is unique to only him so far, and that grants him the ability to dodge. So he's going to dodge 1 out of every 4 attacks. And he also gains 1% attack boost for every 3% of his HP that's missing. Which I haven't calculated it for his new attack, but it's for, I think it's every 3%. Yeah, so 10 times that is obviously going to be a 10% attack boost when he's missing 30% of his HP. So that's when he's like, around 400k, a little bit less than 400k HP, he's getting a 30% attack boost, which means that he's getting almost an extra 100k attack, which is crazy. Cut that number in half again. So when he's at like 200k, he's nearly at 600k attack, like 520, 530 attack. That's huge. So the lower his HP, the higher his damage output, which is once again great for almost every mode except for Cecil's Nightmares, because usually in Cecil's Nightmares, if your characters are getting hurt, you're probably not scoring good. So abilities that require low HP, generally speaking, aren't going to be that effective. And then his fourth skill, which is in my opinion his best skill, Thrag's basic attacks have a 100% chance of unleashing a cone-shaped shockwave in front of him, dealing 100% of his attack as damage to all enemies within the area. Critical hits create a larger cone. That is crazy. Like, that is absolutely insane. I think that is one of the strongest abilities in the game, because essentially what it means is each of his attacks hit for 2 attacks, which is insane for the strongest character in the game to hit twice for every hit. That's amazing. All right, so based off of how long it's taking me to just get through the intro and the first character, I'm going to kind of change the format that I'm doing this in, and I'm going to do that on the fly. And I'm going to talk about 2 more characters kind of at random. And then after that, I'm going to end the video and kind of see if there's any reaction to it and go from there. So I am going to, I'm trying to think of the best way to do this. I'm going to talk about a character I really like, and then I'm going to talk about a character I don't like. So I'm going to choose to talk about King Lizard next. Lizard League is my favorite units in the game. It's kind of why I kept playing the game until Thrag came out. They were my strongest units, and then I had to build mats around Thrag because all is his. So let's start talking about King Liz. So King Liz is an interesting character, primarily due to his second skill. My biggest issue with King Lizard is, amongst other things, is his attack speed. And then just how low his defense is. He does decent attack damage, but his low defense means that he dies pretty quickly. And he also is kind of stuck in a position where, and this is why I say he's kind of bad, you can move Krieg around. Krieg needs one unit paired with him to essentially be a huge buffer to your team. King Lizard needs 2 allies, and both of those allies are, crucial to him being a decent unit. He relies heavily on damage over time, with bleeding and unnamed DOT attack, I believe. Oh no, it's just called wounds. Okay. But what makes the 2 things that make King Lizard so good is tank it yourself. When an enemy targets King Lizard, he forces them to attack the closest ally, boosting that ally's damage by 26% for 7 seconds, their defense by 10% for 7 seconds, and applies a 41% cooldown reduction to the ally. So, essentially what this means is, in certain situations, you could put King Liz in the front line and allow him to get attacked, and then he's going to boost somebody else. And if that somebody else is Thrag or Conquest, that's going to be huge. And then the other thing that's good about King Liz is he increases his entire team's defense by 16% of his base attack when fighting against heroes from the Guardians of the Globe. Additionally, members of the Lizard League team receive a 25% critical chance boost. And so, essentially what this means is he's really good with the League, and he's really good at Guardians around the globe. I think the Lizard League team is essentially designed for this operation. As you can see, I got them in there right now with multi-pol, and consistently able to get 1,200 waves. Battle Beast is in there because he's a bleeding unit, and so he inflicts bleed, and that boosts Iguana. And then Iguana boosts him, and then Komodo gets boosted from it too. You see that healing that Komodo just did? That's because of all of the wounds that Battle Beast and Iguana have applied to the enemies. And so that just keeps Iguana's ult just always full, so she's just always inflicting her ult, which is causing her to always inflict more wounds, which is causing everybody else to get additional life leech, which helps everybody stay alive. Battle Beast is just kind of weak, which is why he keeps dying probably. But I love King Lizard. I love the Lizard League. They are some of my favorite units in the game. I have them in C tier because there's just so many units that can just, like, Volcanica is literally just a better version of King Lizard. Who else? Krieg is kind of a better version of King Lizard as well. Rex is a better version of King Lizard. Fucking Blark is a better version of King Lizard in a lot of ways. These are just all units that carry boost capabilities, but boosts that are more generic and less specific. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about their totems today either. And now let's talk about a unit I don't like. We'll talk about Doc Seismic. So the reason why Doc Seismic is in my must build tier, and the reason I would rate him so highly, is because of a couple of reasons. Number one being he is one of the few characters in the game that give a damage boost to units fighting Viltrumites, which makes Doc very good for certain operations, very good for PvP. Yeah, that's about it. I don't think Doc has a whole lot of usability in a lot of operations, but he will yield you very good results and quite a few Cecil's Nightmares. He will also yield you some decent results in Alliance Warfare, where he is a very, very strong unit. Once again, for those anti-Viltrumite capabilities, especially now that he can be placed in conjunction with a Brit. And with new units like Damien Darkblood and Volcanica that get ability boosts based off of subsoil allies, Doc's ability to summon with his totem, I'm not going to talk about totems a whole lot, make him even more useful. Doc also has the ability to prolong fights, which is good for him, and Cecil have the ability to kind of teleport around the map. Something else that's also affected by Thrag's skill 1 too, if you think about it, because Thrag's going to pull him in, and then Doc's going to be able to activate his shockwave. So even if Doc is on your team and you're using a Thrag pulling him in is just going to proc Doc's shockwave, giving him even more usefulness. So I'm not a big fan of Doc. I don't like his damage output. I don't like the fact that he's human. I don't like the fact that he doesn't synergize well with the best units in the game. So essentially, Doc is gonna be your hyper carry when you build a Doc team 90% of the time, I think. Excuse me. And what I mean by that is, you want to build a team around your Doc most of the time when you're using Doc, which makes him less useful than a lot of other units in the game. And it's a quality that I don't really appreciate out of Doc, and that's why I personally don't like him. And it's funny because I say that, but I was just talking about King Lizard, and King Lizard has the exact same flaw. But the downside for King Lizard is it requires you to put him with Iguana Komodo, whereas Doc can be put with a lot of different units. They're just not many prime units. You don't want to put Doc with Space Racer generally, right? You don't want to put Doc with Tech Jacket. You don't want to put Doc with Anissa. You don't want to put Doc with... You could put Doc with Thrag. You do want to put Doc with a Brit. And that's just, in my opinion, that's problematic, because that means that, you know, when you're really going on the list, like you're looking at, okay, Doc and Robot, 2 technologists, Doc and Dino, technologist, Doc and Volcanica, subsoil, Doc and Damien, subsoil. It makes it harder, that much harder, to build a really strong, effective team around Doc. That's not me saying Doc is bad. Once again, I cannot stress that enough. It's just, when you look at all the hyper carries in the game, when you look at the Thrags, the Blarks, the SRs, the Tech Jackets, the Volks, the Nolans, even the Conquests, the Omnis, he's the weakest hyper carry, in my opinion, in the game. Like, he's literally the weakest hyper carry in the game. It's like, he is the weakest, super strong, high assault character in the game. And that's a niche that's kind of interesting. Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, there's certain characters that get... usually in this game, most characters get a really high stat boost between level 900 and level 1000. Characters like Omni-Man, characters like, oh my god, Immortal stat jump is crazy. Agent Spider didn't really have a big one. Titan didn't really have a big one. Even Russ had a really, really big one. If I'm not mistaken, Doc Seismic has one past 1000, not before 1000, where his attack starts increasing exponentially. I am not 100% certain on this, but if I go to my Alliance Warfare, and I go to my heroes, and I look at my friends... Oh, you can't see his stats. I thought you could for some reason. Yeah, I guess I'm just wrong. Let me see if I can see it like this. No, you can't. You just can't see it. Alright, I don't know why I thought I could see it. But, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how Doc Seismic works. I think he's one of the few units that are like that. I know different units, just they compound their skills differently. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm going to leave things. There's a couple different ways, as I'm wrapping up this video, that I kind of want to handle things from here. I'm willing to come back to this video with very, very little encouragement. Like, if I get 2 comments that are like, hey, I want to hear you break down all these characters in more detail, I promise you I will do it. I I kind of want to get set up to do a longer video because it's looking like that will probably take me pretty close to an hour, maybe an hour and a half to do that. And that just seems like a really long video, especially for like a first video on this game. But this is just a little taste, a little teaser to give you some insight into my brain and to also kind of help you understand. As far as if like you're curious, like how do I determine if this tier list is for me or not? Here's what I'll say. Everything that I'm telling you is true out of the gate for every one of these characters. If you were to get a team as a brand new player that's never played this game before, and you got a level 1 Thrag, level 1 Brit, level 1 SR, level 1 Tech Jacket, level 1 Anissa, all of those characters are going to benefit your account more than any other set of 5 characters in the game. And if you look down my list, that is just generically true. And I think that's important to understand about what's true about this tier list. And even when you start looking at other characters, like a Dinosaurus with no investment is not going to yield you better results than anybody in C tier. Same thing with everybody across the board. Thetis is not going to yield you better results than Uni. Thetis is not going to yield you better results than even King Lizard or Komodo or Iguana with no investment. Out the gate, King Lizard is going to yield your account better results. Out the gate, Conquest is going to yield you even better results. And as you build them up, these things become even more true, not less true. So an Omni-Man, when invested, is going to be even better than everybody in C tier. And another thing I want to stress is categories like extremely niche, right? I know a lot of people are really big fans of the Maulerplex build. I am not a fan. I do hear the functionality of it, but that team is extremely niche. You need 4 of the exact same unit built in very specific ways to interact with a very specific operation in a very specific way. That is nicheness to the extremest value. That does not mean that they're bad. Same thing with Agent Spider. If you're going to build a Red Rush, Agent Spider, Omni-Man, Rex, well done team, Agent Spider is amazing for that. He is a really, really strong unit. Outside of that team, he's almost useless. Same thing for Monster Girl. You can build some very effective teams around Monster Girl. Same thing with Bulletproof. I've seen some really good teams. Even Kid Omni, I've seen some really, really good teams. So I think for a starter player, that this tier list could help you. And for players that are more advanced, my goal in a lot of ways for this tier list is to give you kind of some information that you can look at and register how you should be thinking about both building your teams and building your units. Because I think if you look at these top 5 units and you say, hey, let me prioritize building these, Thrag is going to benefit you everywhere. Brit is going to make your Cecil's Nightmares go crazy. SR is going to be great for your event operations. It's going to be great for train and gain. Same thing for Tech Jacket and Anissa, but they're also all 3 going to be great for PvP and regular operations, with Anissa carrying your downtown destruction. Tech Jacket can single-handedly transform your Well Done. Thrag can single-handedly change your Well Done and your This Is Heavy. Brit is amazing in This Is Heavy, and I suspect he's also equally good, if not better, in Well Done, depending on your Well Done team. So all these characters on these top 5 rows are essential and can get you really good waves, and you can get really good waves in damn near 5 different operations due to this top 5 team. These top 5 characters. That's how strong they are. And then you go literally to the tier underneath, and all 5 of these characters can benefit all of the ops that I was just talking about, right? So you can pair all 5 of these units on the next row with the units on the top row and expound your growth potential for all of your operations exponentially because of how beneficial these extreme synergists are for the broken units. And it just keeps going like that, right? So these are essentially like 5 units. They don't have to necessarily be your team, but those top 5 are game-changing units in a way that nobody else on this list is. And another thing I want to stress too, as I'm really about to wrap it up, is this tier list is also in order, right? So like Thrag is the best, Brit is the second best, SR is third best, Tech Jacket is fourth best, Anissa is fifth best, in my opinion. Because Thrag is going to do the most in the most places.
Brit goes so hard in Cecil's Nightmares, right? He can single-handedly clear almost every single level of a Cecil's Nightmare with the fastest time possible due to his 4th skill. SR is game-changing for apps, right? Same thing with Tech Jacket. Anissa is, especially now that Brit's out, I think that she falls because SR and Tech Jacket are going to be good in almost every single event op, whereas Anissa's only going to be good against humans. So there's a little bit of difference here. And even continuing on the list, I think Krieg is better than Blarg. It's very, very close. I think we're talking about literally splitting hairs here. We're down to the microcosms to discuss why I think Krieg is better than Blarg. But I do think Krieg is slightly better than Blarg, just in the sense that Krieg can summon allies, and that's a huge benefit to your team. Being able to fight with 6 fighters as opposed to 5 is massive. So yeah, in short, I'm going to wrap it up here. Hopefully this is a start to me making more content in relation to Invincible Guarding the Globe. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear feedback. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And, love to hear from anybody that any questions, just hit me up. Thank you much. See you next time.